Hello, hi, good day folks. So today we'll be learning about knowing your quadratic function. So I'll be going through on simple things such as how to sketch a quadratic graph and also how to find the minimum or maximum value and also the axis of symmetry. And first of all, for sketching your graph, you have to know a couple of things. And let's look at this equation first. You have fx equal to negative 5x, negative 2x squared plus 3. And as I mentioned in the previous lesson, you need to make sure your quadratic function is written in this form, ax squared plus bx plus c. Therefore, I have to rearrange this such that my x square should be in front, and make sure you bring the coefficient in front together as well. So in front of your x square you have negative 2, so it will be negative 2x square negative 5x plus 3, and you're not changing the equation whatsoever. And first of all, for sketching your graph, you need to know a couple of things. To sketch your graph of quadratic function, let me put QF, you need to know a couple of things. First is whether you have roots. So you need to find your value of roots. If you don't have any roots, then that will be the case. If you have roots, then you have to define what your roots are when you are sketching it. And the next part, you need to know the shape of the graph, whether it is minimum or maximum. The minimum graph will be like this. Normally for students, I would say it has sort of like a smiley face of it. And your maximum graph, you have your sad face over here. Alright, so that's quite easy for you to imagine, so therefore I would say that. And other than that, you need to know your intercept at your y-axis. Okay, so what does it mean? This is basically a line that passes through your y-axis. So when you have your quadratic function, it's better to have that line defined as well. Alright, so these are the things. And also, last but not least, if you have this is much better. Your minimum, maximum value, so I put it slash, so it will be either 1, and also your axis of symmetry. Alright, so this is going to be located at your turning point of your graph. Alright, in the class I'll go through everything. First we look at the roots. Alright, so for the roots, let's go through the equation first. In this case the equation is pretty simple. So you have fx equal to negative 2x squared negative 5x plus 3. To find the roots, as I mentioned in the previous lesson, there's 3 ways. Factorization, if it is simple, any method that would work is your quadratic formula. You can use your quadratic formula to find your roots for x, and another method is completing the square. So in this case the function is simple, so therefore I will factorize this. So if I factorize this, I get negative 2x. Alright, let me put a bracket open here, and then I have an x. So the next part, you have to think about the number over here, 3. So what are the multiplication of 3? Just 1 times 3. So where you can put 1 times 3 here, I would suggest you put your 3 here. The reason why, so if you multiply by 2x, you get 6x, negative 6x, and then I can just put 1 over here, and this is going to be positive. So when I multiply this, negative 2x times 3, I get negative 6x plus 1x, negative 5x back, and then 1 multiplied by 3, I get my positive 3 back. Alright, so I'm not going to go quite detailed on this. Maybe I can put another video on how to find the roots, and in this example I assume you know this. Alright, and once you have this defined, to find your roots you must set your fx equal to 0. Let me write that over here as well. Set your fx equal to 0, and therefore you have your value of x. So the first value of x is negative 2x plus 1 equal to 0. Therefore your x equal to negative 1 over negative 2. So I can just write it as let me write this. So I can just write it at 1 over 2. Alright, the next part of x, it will be x plus 3 equal to 0. Therefore my x equal to negative 3. So I have my x defined. First is 1 over 2, another one is negative 3. Next part, you need to define your shape. Alright, shape of graph. Let me recap back the equation. So the equation is fx equal to negative 2x square negative 5x plus 3. Alright, to know the shape of the graph you need to look at the value of a. Alright, if your value of a is positive, that means you have a minimum graph. The shape will be as such. If your value of a is negative, that means you have your maximum graph. Minimum graph, this is going to be your maximum graph. So in this case I have my a, which is negative 2. Therefore I have a maximum graph as such. Next thing is to find your intercept, which is intercept at y axis. Find your x equal to 0 to know your intercept at y axis. Alright, so let's set your x equal to 0, and before that let us write this equation. Fx equal to negative 2x square negative 5x plus 3. So I set my x equal to 0. So what's going to happen here? Negative 5, 0 plus 3. All this term going to cancel out since you have a 0 there in the equation, and you just end up with 3. So 3 is the point where it will intercept your y-axis. Alright, graphically how you should imagine. Alright, let us draw a little bit. Graphically you can just imagine as such. You have a function like this. So you have a maximum graph. So how it will look like? So your maximum graph, the shape will be sad face, and you have your roots. Let me recall back the roots I got earlier. The roots I have is 1 over 2 and negative 3. So I have one located at negative area, I have one located at the positive area, and I have my y-intercept defined at 3. Alright, so how it will look like? So it will be as such. Okay, let's call this point as 3. This is a simple sketch, it's not to scale, just to remind you guys. And then you have your roots. So here will be 1 over 2, and here would be negative 3. This would be y, and this would be x. And I would like to remind you guys again, the reason why graphically, how you can visualize this. The roots are located when your y is equal to 0. Alright, so at this point your y is equal to 0. So at this point you have your values for x. Likewise, your y-intercept is defined when your x equal to 0. So at this point, this coordinate here, your x is equal to 0, correct? So that's where you will find the intersection for your y. Now we are left with one more thing, which is your point. This we call it as turning point. I believe some of you guys have learned some basic of physics. So turning point, the reason for that, if you have a particle that moves through from the left hand side to the right hand side, so at this point you have a change in direction. The moment it hits to this point, then you will have a change in direction as such. Therefore it is called turning point. There's so many other names for that. Sometimes we call it a stationary point. So the reason why we call it a stationary point, when you throw something in a projectile motion, you exert some force to it. At some point your force will be overcome completely by the gravitational, so therefore it becomes stationary and is going to free fall. Let's find the turning point, which is essentially your axis of symmetry. So if you guys know the meaning of axis of symmetry is how you divide certain things. Therefore I have an equivalent split on the left and also the right. So axis of symmetry is defined at the turning point. Or my turning point is my axis of symmetry. In this case, my axis of symmetry will fall here at the x-axis. Correct? Alright? And this is the value of what we call it as maximum value. Alright? The reason why I call it maximum is just simply referring to the shape of the curve. So this is a maximum value. The maximum value is your y in this case, like what you can see over here. So my turning point is composed of two things. First is my axis of symmetry, and the second is my maximum value. Maximum value is very specific to this question. If you have a minimum graph, then it's going to be a minimum value. To find the axis of symmetry and maximum value, you just need to complete the square. Alright, so how to complete the square? Let us do that here. How to complete the square? As I told you before, you need to make sure your a value is positive. Therefore I have to take my negative 2 out from this equation. I take my negative 2 out from this equation. I have x squared. When I have my negative 2 out, I need to reproduce back my negative, so I gotta put my positive. So positive negative is going to be negative, and then I have a 5 here, and then divide by 2 x, and then here I need a positive when I multiply back, so therefore I put the same sign over here, and then I have 3 over 2. Alright, so I have this defined. Next step is negative 2. Gotta put my bracket, and then here I have x square. So the reason why we do that, we're going to put a square later, so I just have to put my x, and then positive, I bring it down, and the next step over here, I just need to divide by 2. So I divide by 2, I have 5 over 4, and then I close the bracket, and then I have a square outside. Then as I told you before, you should have a negative. Alright, negative outside, it is part of the equation as well. Once you have the negative termed out, then whatever here in this bracket here, you need to square that value. Alright, so let's call this as k square. So you need to square that value. So once you square that value, it's going to be 25 over 16. Alright, 5 square 25, 4 square 16. The rest of the thing I just have to rewrite. So what remains next is negative 3 over 2. Now I close my bracket. Alright, so once I close my bracket, I have negative 2. Make sure I put back the big sign back, and then I have my x. I have positive 5 over 4 square. Now I just have to solve this. Negative 25 over 16, negative 3 over 2 is going to be negative 49 over 16. Make sure you put back your big bracket here. Alright, now you just need to expand your negative 2, then you just expand it as such, and you expand it as such. Alright, so you have -2. Then for the first part you don't have to do anything, just square it. The second part you need to expand. So negative negative is going to be positive. You have a 2, you have 16, so you can simplify, you have 49/8. Alright, so once you have in this form, it's pretty straightforward. Your axis of symmetry is -5/4. How I got this? I just have to take this equation here and then equate that to 0, then I can find back. Alright, let me write it over here so you guys can know as well. So x plus 5/4 equal to 0, x equal to -5/4. That's how I got my axis of symmetry. Alright, so the next part is just as simple as taking whatever here, that's my maximum value. So the maximum, as I mentioned to you earlier, it entirely depends on the shape of the graph. So my maximum value is 49/8. Okay, it's a positive. So how can I write my coordinate for my turning point? Of turning point, let me write it TP, is just my axis of symmetry, which is my x, -5/4, my maximum value, which is 49/8. Alright, so -5/4, 49/8, it basically will locate here. So this is the point. Let me write this in red. This is the point, -5/4, 49/8. This is my turning point coordinates. Alright, so that's all for today's lesson. Hope you guys learned something useful today. See you in the next video.